Hello, everybody, and welcome to Powerful Stuff. Powerful Stuff is your connection to your inner world and the outer world around you with a little bit of cheekiness, a little bit of playfulness. We like to take our self-development journey with a grain of salt over here. And I am your host, Meredith Baker. I'm a leadership coach helping entrepreneurs work on their sense of self-trust and inner confidence from the inside out. And Powerful Stuff also hosts live community experiences in LA and beyond. And I'm super excited for our episode today. If you're wondering how you can transform your self-limiting beliefs and upgrade your life, be fully seen, and help others do the same, this is the episode for you. I have Alexa Gray on. She is one of my former attendees of my Upgrade 12-week group coaching program for high-performing women to help women transform their self-limiting beliefs into self-trust and unshakable confidence and intuition from the inside out. And Alexa is the founder and CEO of Bloome, a boutique marketing and social media agency helping brands really shine and share their bright light in the digital space. And she's now actually helping people learn how to market themselves and be seen in that way as well, which is super exciting. And Alexa also has an amazing past as one of the first employees of Ollipop managing their social and marketing. And Ollipop is one of my all-time favorite beverages. I feel like I go through at least like 10 a week. Saved me from my Diet Coke days, but neither here nor there. But today we'll be going on a journey with Alexa, getting to hear where she was before she went through the upgrade, what her journey as an entrepreneur has been like and what her experience was like in the upgrade, doing her self-development work and what it's been like integrating it on the other side. So without further ado, Alexa, so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Meredith. I'm so honored to be here. You inspire me in so many ways, and it's a dream to be here with you today, truly.
Oh my gosh. I love how quickly this came together because I was facilitating a retreat in the Redwoods this weekend. And I was like, it'd be so cool. Like, because I ran into you on the Venice canals the other week. And I'm like, it would be so cool for Alexa to just like share her whole story. Because I feel like you really dove into the work of the upgrade. You were like doing all the things and just like blossoming. And so that's when I texted you. And like 5 minutes later, you're like, I'm down.
There was no hesitation.
There was no
It was always a yes.
There was no hesitation. And I have to rewind it back to us getting connected in the first place. Shout out to one of my other former clients, Lexi, for introducing us. We love you, Lexi, if you're listening.
Thank you.
And I would love, before we kind of rewind it back and go to the start of your journey, to kind of just share your, in your own words, what like the upgrade was like for you and what you got out of it. And then we'll kind of break it down in more of a chronological level.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say the first time we met, and actually both times we met, I was in tears speaking with you because I was so stressed out as an entrepreneur. I knew I needed a coach and I didn't know where to turn. And we set up our meetings and I thought, oh my God, this girl's going to think I'm crazy. I'm crying on the phone just at the very beginning of us meeting. But I was just so stressed out and really looking for guidance and support from someone who understood how to navigate both business and the inner world, and to do that in a way that felt in alignment with me and in a way where I could really adopt new tools to accelerate my growth journey. And I just immediately felt a kinship when we met and saw so much of your growth and your own story and development. And I remember the first even meditation we did, you just took me to such a peaceful place and I experienced such a transition in my mindset. And I knew the cohort would be that times 3 months. And so I said yes and wanted to see what that commitment would look like. And doing it in a group setting felt so right. And I was craving community and craving that leadership too from you, and just felt so safe to grow in that environment. So I came in feeling very stressed as an entrepreneur with two people working for me and working with various clients. And by the end of it, I just felt completely transformed and felt like I had really unlocked the person I always wanted to be. And it was such an amazing journey to feel all the layers in the process of getting there.
Unlock the person you've always wanted to be. I love that so much. And I feel that you're like radiating with vitality and like, yeah, just like launching so many cool things in your own business and
Thank you.
bringing light to all the spaces that you enter. So yeah, to rewind it back, like, even before, we met when you were saying you were on your entrepreneurial journey, had two people working for you, were feeling stressed. Can you talk about like the few years before that? Because I know you had started an agency when you were 24. And then, Ollipop, you said, was your first salaried job. And I know you also went through grief with the loss of your mother during that time. So can you kind of give, for our listeners, a overview of what those, initial years in your 20s were like leading up to the point that we met?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my journey started, I would say, even way back when I was 13 years old. That was the first time I picked up a camera, and I started studying photography from that age onward. And so every summer and even throughout my college experience at Bard, where I went to school, I studied fine art photography. And I was always so passionate about the arts and photography and video. And when I graduated, I was feeling really lost and felt like I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the skill anymore. And so I ended up just taking so many random jobs, from pet sitting to a mother's assistant, and eventually ended up working on set for companies like McDonald's and Miracle Grow, and realizing that that just didn't feel in alignment with me, even though I loved seeing the scale and size of these amazing commercials and sets and learning how it was all put together. But there was a really clear hit and download, like, you're meant to work with brands you love and believe in. And so I decided to get a degree as a health coach from the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. And that just totally unlocked a big piece of me, which was learning how to navigate the world of health and wellness, developing a passion for cooking, and really nourishing the body from both a mind, body, and spiritual level, and seeing that this is now in the mainstream and this is all normalized, and we can help one another to feel better on all these levels. So this was all happening. And then I started a blog called Superfood Super Life back in my early 20s.
So cute. We love that.
My dad came up with the name. Shout out, Neil. And I would go to every single health and wellness event I could attend in LA, like from Mercado Sagrado to the Love Beauty Wellness Festival, and just all things in between. And I also started getting connected to wellness, like magazines like the Chalkboard magazine and conscious living guide. And like, I just wanted to be so immersed, and I used my skills as a photographer and someone who loved social media in those early days to tell all these stories about brands and makers and artisans. And I would interview these makers for my own personal blog. And I just fell in love with the amazing products I was coming across. And it could have been, a stevia from Omega Organics, or could have been a skin oil from like Poppy and Someday. And I just loved all these stories and the quality of the products that they were making. But as I was meeting these people, I realized like they don't have a really good website. They don't have a newsletter. Their social presence is lacking. The quality of the photography of the products is not there. And so I pitched myself first as a photographer to say, hey, like, I know I've interviewed you for my blog, but I also do photography. Like, could I potentially shoot your products? And so people started saying yes. And then I started building websites on Squarespace and sending out newsletters for clients and ghostwriting and, connecting with influencers in the space and doing gifting. And both of my parents were very entrepreneurial. So I just saw how like they followed that fire and that curiosity. And even though I didn't have the formal training, I was just so hungry and passionate that I just thought to myself, like, I could teach myself anything I want to learn. And so long story short, ended up working with over 50 brands and individuals in the wellness space. I hired all my friends, which was a crazy idea, but I did it anyways. And I just like learned how to support businesses and brands from a social and digital marketing perspective. And I didn't really know what I was truly doing, even though I did have these natural skills and was just a naturally social person. So I was like, how do I just put all of that together? But I didn't have like the formal business training. And then along came Ollipop, and I had worked with the co-founders, Ben and David, on their previous beverage venture, and then again on Ollipop. And then when I went in-house with them, it was just the most remarkable business journey and personal journey of having them support me as an individual, grow, within that company, and really just understand like what are the structures and formalities of business that, should be there to help accelerate the creativity and the development of a brand. So being there was like the perfect education that I needed that I didn't have in terms of like formal business training, matched with my fire and eagerness as an entrepreneur. So was with them for over 5 years and saw them grow from zero to a $200 million brand when I left. And now they're on track to do $500 million this year. And it's just amazing because those guys are remarkable and deserve all the success. And I was just so honored to like be around such high quality people that left such a mark on my life. And then when I left, I just knew I wanted to start my own thing again and bring all of the learnings into Social Bloom on that level. So that's the long story.
That's a long story. Oh my gosh.
I think I covered it all. And I did skip over the part about my mom, which is really important that I'll briefly go into, but she passed in 2019, and her name was Robin, and she was such a powerful boss babe, amazing entrepreneur, and we were best of friends. So losing her was a tremendous loss, and it really impacted my life. But when she passed, I remember thinking like, this is a sink or swim moment. Like there's so much pain that I felt like I could get lost in this forever. And then I just heard this voice inside, and maybe it was her voice, but it was like, there's also an opportunity here, and you can use this really intense energy and like transcend every block and every small thought and break through to the other side and just go for it and don't overthink. And I just kept following that and every day thinking like, how can I like live in her honor and like live in her legacy and be the bright star she always saw me as, even though I used to hide and keep myself very small and contained and I think suppressed at times. So when she passed, I just realized how life is so, it moves on very quickly, and that the time is now, and we shouldn't wait to build our dreams, no matter what age we are or what skill level we're at. We can really call in the support. And it just transformed how I did everything from that moment onwards.
Wow. What a like beautiful way to honor your mom too, by taking all of that pain and transmuting it into like your thirst for life and gifts for the world. And I mean, I can only imagine like what heartache and grief was like, and to hear that voice and to be like the time is now. I mean, what a incredible shift to come out of like such a painful experience of losing your mom.
Yeah. And I know that so many go through this. And I think culturally, what I'm hoping to see is more spaces to talk about it and get the support that's needed, the coaching. I think that, there's so much room for growth in that area, and helping people to find themselves when they get lost or they lose a really important relationship in their life, and how to continue to define yourself, which we were also talking about, of like even leaving Ollipop and being like, who am I if I'm not the Ollipop girl? And like,
right after you've had a big business success at somewhere, it's like the courage you need to take the next leap, when it's like that can sometimes feel like that was your identity or what you're known for.
Totally. I think that's why so many people will stay in things for maybe too long sometimes, whether it's a relationship or a job. There's so much identity and maybe even ego wrapped into it. And, and that, the world, I think, wants us to keep evolving, even past that sometimes, and to not be afraid. And I'm just so grateful that the time that I left Ollipop was such perfect timing, because I would never be doing Social Bloom, and I wouldn't, who knows if I'd have my own thing and like truly be pushed to do this. And it was the catalyst for building this like dream that I've always had. And so the scary walking through that fire and this scary experience of leaving, really like got me going onto the next chapter. And I'm just so grateful for that too.
Wow, what an incredible journey, like combining your different passions for social and health and starting that initial agency, and that kind of leading, following the breadcrumbs of that leading you to Ollipop, and then returning to like those entrepreneurial roots of like, okay, it's time to grow again. And so can you kind of share where you were mentally when you and I met? Because I think your mom's passing was in 2019.
Yeah.
And so we met in the beginning of 2024. So like 5 years later, you had started Social Bloom and had 2 employees. Like what were the things that you were struggling with, or maybe like you could taste that next version of you, but you weren't accessing it? Like what was your mental space at that time?
Yeah, it's such a good question. Well, so I had started Social Bloom in August of 23. And then I had my 2 employees. We had signed 3 clients at the time. And by the time we had spoken in the earlier part of this year, I was just really struggling with boundaries and saying no to clients if it was, they wanted to have more meetings, or, just even the way we were interacting. I felt myself like slipping away into the work again, and just kind of letting go of this healthy sense of self, and that like I'm in the driver's seat as well, and leading the Social Bloom team, interacting with clients. And I just felt very shaky and kind of wobbly. And I also felt like a big thing I had always worked on was this relationship I had with myself, with my identity, with my body, and just how I appeared to others. And really feeling like, just as a child or growing up in LA, there were so many pressures to look a certain way or be a certain way. And I think I felt, prey to those powers at that time. And so becoming an adult and coming to you, I felt like I was able to bring my deepest wound of feeling like I'm not enough, or whether I'm not pretty enough, or I'm not talented enough, all of the things of not enough, and being like, I'm ready to really let this go, because I can't move forward unless I heal this on some level. And that, I think piece by piece in the cohort, we like worked through that, and I was able to be super vulnerable about it, and also reclaim parts of myself, or connect with my inner child, and do things that freed up the anxious energy I was cultivating, and just set up all these new habits. And I think that's what I love the most about the cohort, was like all these new habits, from celebrating my wins to reframing certain triggers, and practicing that again and again. Like I love the idea of like rewiring the brain and remapping everything. And I feel like your cohort did just that on so many levels.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that. And I love all of the tools that you dove into, like the wins and speaking to our inner child. And yeah, I mean, what an amazing thing for you to do, to like take the leap, because as an entrepreneur too, it can be so hard sometimes to even carve out that time for ourselves. And I know one of our first calls, like we talked about like balance, and even like making time for movement and social life, and let alone like carving out this time for personal development work, while you are running a business, managing 2 employees, being the face of the brand to, your clients. So what like permission did you have to give yourself to like take the leap? And I know too, like, I think we talked about, not being sure if it was the right time or not. And then we had, a moment at Moss, the co-working space, where actually Savannah, who is in my second cohort, created it. But yeah, can you talk about like what that decision-making process was like while you were juggling so many things in the air of like, okay, I'm committing to myself, because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, when I like embarked on different self-development journeys of like, oh, maybe not now isn't the right time, or what if I can't do everything.
Totally. I think being with you in person was incredibly powerful because I got to be around the other cohort members. And I think just hearing everyone's journeys of what they went through and transcended in their time with you was so powerful. And so meeting you prior, I like knew there was something special. But I think almost with every business, it's like different when you hear it from someone that's done the work, or like a client testimonial, or just how other people experience the brand. I don't know what that is, if it's just like you're seeing things from a different angle, but I saw myself through the eyes of so many of those other women, or what Savannah created. And I was like, Meredith can like help people like start like big ass businesses. So she's got it going on, but she also helps people on like the inner journey of finding themselves and going through difficult things and not getting lost and seeing the world through a fresh perspective. And I just felt like when I was in that group, that there was just this like immediate, like, I know I have to do this. This is for me. But I think it was through hearing those other journeys that really something clicked into place. And yeah, I think I like texted you right after and I was like, yes, done. Let's do it. Okay, come on. You know, all that, like, it just was an instant thing. But yeah, it was just an amazing thing to, like you said, to be, I loved the consistency of meeting every week. I think that's where like really big growth happens. It's like, maybe not this like one big day, but all of the consistent weeks of always showing up and doing the homework as best as I could, no matter what that was for that week. You know, I think sometimes people might look at a program and be like, well, I can't read all the books and I can't do all the homework, so I shouldn't sign up. But it was like, oh, I like walked into it and made it my own, and I still got so much out of it, even managing a business and still showing up. So I felt like I've kind of let go of perfection and have just opted in to that belief of like the small micro movements and habits will add up to big things, and like letting go of the perfectionism. And then I feel like I got the experience I was really looking for.
Yeah, I love so much that you just said that, because like one of my quotes to live by is like tiny shifts over time equal big change. And that's what I
Yeah.
tell all of the women in the upgrade. It's like not about, you know, especially if we all are like, you know, coming from like a high performance background, it's like wanting to get the A+ and do all the things and every single homework. And it's like, even with self-development, it can almost like we can weaponize it against ourselves that way, versus like I'm showing up and that's enough. And
Yeah.
like I'm receiving the wisdom or the medicine that I need to hear, simply like just by being here, by listening to another woman share and like having my own unlock from that.
Yeah, I think that was one of the best experiences, was hearing everyone else speak and, you know, seeing like someone, hearing someone share and then thinking to myself, oh, my other friend is going through something like that now, and I can better understand her because of what someone else shared in the group. And I think even just like in this post-COVID era of like people wanting to gather and to be together, like I just see this world where like we're all sharing gifts, and like that's the way of the future, is like more people just sharing their gifts with each other
Mm-hmm.
and communing as a group. And I think we're like a group species, and we're like meant to be with one another and to share. And that's like the magic and the potential, I feel like, of humanity too. So I feel like you created that on that level, and that it just amplifies the healing, and yeah, being witnessed in like your truth, from an unconditional place from others. It's just so powerful and like rare to find that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like feeling and allowing yourself to be like fully seen, and still like getting that reflection back of you at your highest self from like other women that you admire. And yeah, can you kind of talk about what that was like, kind of starting to like open up in the group, and like what was coming up those initial weeks when we go through, you know, looking at our excavating our patterns, excavating like the self-limiting beliefs that we were carrying, like what, you know, what was coming up during those times, and when were like the first clicks or the first shifts that you noticed in the upgrade for yourself, and how was that like manifesting?
Yeah, I think that I noticed right away that I felt calmer just in my day-to-day life. Like things felt less chaotic and erratic. And I felt like so much of my anxiety, I was able to process that like within the group. So it almost stopped seeping into other moments in life because there was a therapeutic container that the group held. And so I just noticed immediately that I felt so much more capable of doing the really big and scary things. I even put up a quote on my wall and it says, "You must do the things you think you cannot do." And it's an Eleanor Roosevelt quote. And I just love that so much. And I felt like it aligned with everything we worked on because so much of what I'm doing now is like the things I really think I cannot do. And it's so powerful to have had you as a coach and the group like cheering you on into the darkness and into the unknown, because that is, I think, what we're afraid to do. But that it started to become more thrilling than scary.
Mm.
And it started to be something I looked forward to instead of like trying to avoid. And having been someone that was a true avoider and now be someone who's like, okay, how do I run as fast as I can into the unknown? Like, it's just such a vast difference of who I was as a person. And I just felt like I could always chat with you or expect to come into the group and know that like this is the time to clean out and pull any weeds of resistance that are like blocking the excitement to move into the unknown and into the next chapter. But I felt like I just noticed right away like a sense of calm but also confidence, and like even coming to the group in like a different outfit or like certain meditations of imagining myself of where I would be in a year. Like it was so something so simple that you did was so profound, and it really allowed me to like quantum leap into that vision. And I was like, wait, I can totally do that. Like I just need to take the time to think through it. And I think you just had such a dynamic setup of tools that just helped me to finally start believing like, hey, this is possible, even if it's not here yet, and
Yeah.
to really like let go of any belief and of that's not possible, and to nurture my inner child who like is scared and like even facing the deepest fears. Like I think
Yeah.
that's such a good one too. It's like when you face the deepest fear and you like realize you're like fine even when you face it, you're like, oh my God, I can like handle so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I love that you brought up the deepest fear inventory. And it's so true. It's like when we can come to the rock bottom and sit there and like let our inner child know, okay, I'm like not going anywhere. Like we're here together and we will take the next step forward. That can be like the reassurance we need to completely like relax and allow ourselves to take the big swing, as you say. And so when you were converting, like, like you were saying, like the fear into like something thrilling, what were some of the first like shifts you did in your life or like actions that you took like during the upgrade, whether it was like boundary setting or leaps with clients or carving out time in your relationship? Like what were some of those first like data points that you were getting as you were diving in?
Yeah, I would say, well, one of my goals was to make more quality time with my fiance, Brandon. And I felt like that was something that I noticed right away is just like a greater awareness in that relationship that was so core and meaningful to my day to day. I also felt like I was just a lot more organized, like with my time. Like I just always told myself like I'm not very good at time or I'm always late, and I just noticed like, oh, I'm like early to things now, or
You were early to the
I
podcast
was early to the
today. You beat
podcast.
me
I'm
here.
like I just felt like, I was like, oh, I'm actually like maybe I am good with my calendar and I can be like just so good at following up, and like these old beliefs that I'm not, like those started to fade away. And then I think the biggest thing too is like finally being seen and sort of like practicing what I preach with all of my clients of like getting onto social media and doing videos and speaking to camera and being seen and being really truthful and honest about where I was at that day, and people ended up wanting to work together from seeing pieces like that and hearing what I had to say. And so I just felt like there was just some sort of veil that was lifted of like, oh, I'm just like not overthinking it anymore. I'm just in the doing and in the action and less of the overthinking. And it was just easy to go right into like action mode.
I love that. And I think if I remember correctly, you also like did some dance classes again.
Yes, that was my for the inner child date was the vision was to go to a ballet class. So I ended up going and I ended up reconnecting to like a high school friend who was also a ballerina and we ended up going together and it was so beautiful and it's something I want to do more of. I think the hard part is like, okay, once you go through the cohort, like you get the upgrade, but how do you keep it up? There should be like there's like a whole how to keep it up, and you're so good at staying in touch on that stuff, but the integration, but like, yeah, ballet and dancing, it was like one of those things that just by doing that, like, it just like opened up a whole like portal inside of me. Like just that a couple of classes even was breaking like the constant routine of just work and being like, I'm so much more than my work, which I know has been like said on the podcast too, of like, everyone is so much more than like just your job, and to like really put love and time into those things and how it adds to like the whole garden of your life and that it's important to honor those things and explore new things or be a beginner again and not be like so hard and such perfectionist about everything. But yeah, that dance class like really set me free.
Oh, I love
great.
that.
I was like fluttering around. It was great.
Oh, yeah. I love that you were like doing that for your inner child date and yeah, like you said, carving out intentional time for your relationship and allowing yourself to be fully seen like you help your clients do. It was like a real rite of passage or walking the fire of like doing it yourself. And with that one, because I know it was a big theme for you in the upgrade of like allowing yourself to be fully seen, unconditionally loving yourself. What was your internal journey in the upgrade as we were going through, addressing our patterns or self-limiting beliefs, understanding where little Alexa was coming from and like, what were the steps that were most impactful to you to get to that unconditional love place and then, allow yourself to be seen externally from that?
Yeah, I think writing a letter to myself was really powerful and just like acknowledging like how far I had come or how beautiful I already was and that like I already was beautiful enough this whole time. I even remember like looking back at old photos where I was always so hard on myself and I think we can all fall prey to this of like overthinking and over criticizing ourselves from a photographic standpoint, which like also interests me. Like I love the power of photography, but also it's interesting how it can affect us psychologically. And it's like, how can we relate to that medium and just also like love wherever we're at? Because there were times in my life I'd look back at photos and be like, oh, I don't like how I look, but like I love that I still love that girl and she's still perfect as she is. And I'm not going to focus so much on like pulling and picking it all apart, but more being like, oh my God, she was going through this like amazing journey. And like that's part of the full story. And so I think I just felt like writing that letter to myself had such a big impact. I think being able to show up to the cohort and if I was like having a hard day or I really needed to cry, and be seen and be super vulnerable. It just felt so good to be in a place that was safe to do that and where so many people were then like, we see you and we see your inner and outer beauty and to like hear that confirmation. And for me to be like, that's the new story I want to be telling myself, like that I'm beautiful on the inside and the outside and in all different states and in all different types of looks. And that beauty is something that's like, I think it starts from like such a deep place on the inside and from an unconditionally loving place. And you like feel it when you're around people who I think really embody that and they love themselves no matter what their eyelashes look like that day or what the color of their hair is. And that beauty is still like an energy. So it's like, oh, how do I like just tap into that? And what's truly beautiful to me like is unconditional love of myself and of others. And like that's what's felt and like that's what's powerful. So just focusing on that, I think could be so helpful for all of us that can tend to like overanalyze ourselves in that way. And especially with social media too. Like I just think about so much of the just like, the existential thoughts on social media and like how can we use this technology for good? And that's something I talk a lot about and teach a lot about is like this isn't going away. So how do we have a healthy relationship with it? How can we relate to it in a way that serves us and that tech serves us instead of the other way around, and eradicating and turning anything else off that isn't serving like our highest good? And so helping people through that, because I think a lot of people are afraid to shine and share on social because it gives them the ick. But it's if they could just rewrite their relationship with it, then they could like use the platform for so many beautiful things or ways to connect. And so I don't know if I really answered your question, but
Yeah.
I hope that it's touched on some points that resonated.
Totally. Yeah. Of the love letter to yourself, of like loving yourself unconditionally, regardless of what you feel like your hair looks like or whatever like looks like or comes across as. And then that kind of translating into the magnetism. And with and kind of on that note with social media, I know like I think it was either during the very end of the upgrade or right after, then you like launched your rebrand and put out the photos of yourself on social.
Yeah,
which you
that was
said
right after. It was crazy.
At the time was like edgy for you. And so and like now you're just like, okay, being seen all the time, like, and launched an amazing cohort for which was like your dream child when we had our initial discovery call of like you were working with brands, but you're like, I really want to help individuals learn how to like brand themselves. And then by the time the upgrade was over, you had launched your rebrand, you had amazing photos of yourself on like online and were like had fully like visioned and we're about to launch this course for individuals.
Yeah, totally. Shout out to Bettina Bogar. She was the photographer I worked with. And it was so weird. It was like the first shoot where like I was like the focal point as well as my team. And so it was so weird having produced so many shoots throughout my career and never being the focus of it. And then just being like, all right, it's go time. And we shot in January and I didn't release them really until the summer. So I was sitting on them for a while. And yeah, it was just crazy. Like the timing of it really synced up. And I just felt like, oh my God, I'm so glad I shot those photos because now I'm ready. And like that work was done. And I had a lot of resistance come up to the photo shoot too. Like even looking at the photos or knowing what outfits to wear. And I just realized like, this isn't going to be my last photo shoot. This is just the first, and I'm going to learn something and to have fun with it, to work with a great photographer and find a beautiful space. And it felt so good just to give myself permission to be seen. And I think that's what so many of my clients are also so excited to work on, like all these amazing, talented people. And there's this resistance of like, what will people think of me or what happens when I'm seen? And I think that that's become such a thrilling experience for me too, as like, I like, it feels so exciting and almost thrilling to put yourself out there. Cause like, you never know what's going to come back. I think it'd probably get harder if, there are sometimes negative things that come back, but that there's like something there that's a teachable moment and that it's not really about you. It could, be about someone else, and to still like stand in your truth and to still continue to put yourself out there. And I have a lot of admiration for people who continue to do that, even when they might have some resistance from the outside world. But I feel like we're all meant to shine, and like we came here to shine. And the more we shine and let our gifts flow, like the more we're really rewarded or manifest and all the good stuff too.
Yes.
It helps us just share with others. So yeah, it was great. And now working with, doing a cohort where it's focused on social and marketing and sort of like everything I do with one-on-one clients and with brands, now doing it in a group setting. It's so powerful for everyone in there to learn, like a lot of them share the same difficulties or blocks, whether it's a technological block or just being seen. And so I'm really excited to help people tap into their power and just, get all the tools they need to then like run with it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's so cool that like as you did that work on yourself it's like this stuff like happens like so quickly
Oh
after,
my God,
you know?
instant.
And I want to circle back to that in a few minutes. And I'm sure our listeners would be curious to know some of the like branding tips and tricks on like letting themselves be seen, that, you know, connection from our inner world to like the outer screen.
Yeah.
But just a few last like little upgrade questions. And these can be like kind of like rapid fire.
Yeah.
So we can give everyone some of the tips from your zone of genius in your social sphere. But what was like one of the biggest challenges that came up in the upgrade? Obviously, like self-development work can be fun. Sometimes it's challenging. Was there ever a moment of like resistance or feeling like you were hitting a plateau? And how did like you work through that, or like the group help you work through that? And like,
Yeah.
what was that shift on the other side?
Yeah, I think the reframing of the deep triggering pattern, we did that a couple of times, but I think that was probably the most challenging thing, just because the belief that I could ever change it was like so set in and so locked in that I was like, how am I not going to be triggered from this like really intense trigger that keeps coming up again and again? And even the first time we did it, I was like, oh, that would be nice to like not be triggered. But like, I don't know if I really believed that it was possible. But I think that, you know, that was hard. I think even like the existential kink and kind of like giving yourself permission to like give into that other side, and like
Oh,
that
just to
was
put
the
a
most
pause on that. Yeah, so our listeners know existential kink is like kind of like a fun play on shadow work, where it's like, okay, if I have these self-sabotaging patterns, or like, why does this always happen to me? It's like this fun radical ownership way of like, some part of me loves always being late, or some part of me loves dating emotionally unavailable men. Like, and just like, exactly. Okay, so go on. I just want to
yeah,
give
some
our
part of me
listeners.
is like always obsessed with myself and how I look. Thanks. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
No.
exactly. Some part of me just loves like, yeah, being obsessive and like nitpicking like my image or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that.
There was so much resistance. I was like, I can't have a kink. Like, that's not okay. And I don't want to like work on that. And I think there was probably the most resistance there. But being like, I'm just going to do it anyways. And like Meredith said, it's fine. And, you know, it just was like, it was cool to lean into something that I had so much resistance on. But I also feel like it does give you permission to integrate the shadow, and then we all have shadows, and like there
And to
is a
love
message
those
there.
shadows
Yeah.
fully. And so, yeah, with that one, I love that you're just like, I have resistance and I'm just going to do it anyways, and not have expectation around it, but just like see what happens. And then what was the thing that started to like change as you were just like, fuck it, I'm going to just do it?
I think because in the group you're practicing a new way of being, like then it was just I was able to take that out into the real world. Like I was like, oh, I'm with the cohort members and in the group. I was like, oh, I'm sharing like the real visions of what I want, or I'm practicing the person I want to be, or I'm integrating the shadow. And so it just felt like really easy to then like go out into the real world and being like, I have my plan. Like I now have my map of like how I want to navigate this when it comes up in the real world. So it was like almost like the cohort is like this practice space and this like incubation space where like throw anything at the wall, put anything out there. We're going to discuss it and dive into it. But then, you know, you kind of leave with like clarity and insight and, you know, having processed things so deeply. And then like when you're out in the real world, it's like, I just felt like I was pulling back on those experiences and things were not as triggering. And I kept telling people like, just about you or those tools, because I was like, it just started to really unlock right away. I think I just was so open and so ready for change. And I think that's why I felt like very sponge-like. I was like, everything coming in, like I'm going to take what's really working, leave the rest behind. But it just felt like I was just so grateful to have help. Like I just really was ready to transcend, and I was working so hard, and I felt like I was working so hard in my business and then on myself. And then I just noticed like things just got easier too. Like I was still working hard, but it didn't feel as hard, and life felt easier. And I felt like just way more in flow from it all, to put the shout out to the greatest word ever. But I did feel like I was in more flow, and it was such a relief, you know, from being really scared, and even being able to like work through really difficult moments of like my business, the ups and downs of it, holding steady. And I think it just gave me this like really powerful, grounded energy of being really steady within myself.
Yeah, I love that. Like the sense of equanimity of like, I know who I am. And regardless of what happens on the top, or I like to use this analogy of like, being the bottom, or that my friend Will told me many years ago, which I love, but like being on the bottom of the ocean, like our true essence. And then it's like unaffected by the weather of the top, where it's like, especially as an entrepreneur, it's so easy to like get caught in the weather of like the things happening, the emails coming in, like whether there's like stormy waves or whatnot, or even the middle of the ocean where it does like sway you a little bit, but like really returning down to like that core of like, I know who I am. I've got me. I'm going to get through everything.
Yeah. And not overthinking things. I think that was something too where, and I see that with a lot of my friends that are, growing and ready to just do and be in the action mode of things. It's like, just don't ever think and create. Or I heard this line where it was like, create, don't consume, and that like we're in the era of consumption. So it's like, how do we transcend it? And I think it is through creation, and like, whether it is through the arts, which I think is such a good vehicle for it. But it could be through other ways too. And it's like just making things in the real world and creating things. I think it really just helps us like get back to where we are now and like not to overthink things and get stuck in the mind. And I think because that can be its own rabbit hole. And I think that I love that so many of your tips and tools just like brought me back out like into reality and into this like grounded space. And like I didn't get lost in the psyche. Like you were able to excavate the psyche, but then you always brought it back down to reality, which I always appreciated.
I'm like, we do what we can at the F grade. I love it. Okay, a few last like little rapid fire questions about your experience in it. What has been the like module that was your favorite, or like the tool that really like stuck with you, or that you really use the most, being a few months out?
Yeah, I think that I think doing our meditation on the ideal, your ideal scene, that was the first thing we did, and it was something we did throughout, and it's something I do all the time. But I think there's just so much power to like imagining life like, a year from now, and like the things that you want and what that world is like and what's happening. I know I also like recorded it out loud and would listen to it again and again. That tool like always stuck with me, and just felt like, no matter what's going on in the here and the now, I can revisit the ideal scene and go there and know that like I'm going to get there, even if it's on a different timeline than I picture in my head. Like I know I'm going to get there, and I like gave myself permission to go there in the meditation and to feel it and be like, oh my God, all these things are so exciting and so beautiful and rewarding. And I think that was one, but I also think that there was an element of instilling gratitude in the cohort that was really powerful, of feeling like even though like that ideal scene might not be happening now, like I'm already experiencing abundance in this way. I'm already experiencing success in that way. And like the weekly, sharing the wins was so helpful too, because I was like, oh my God, I did all of these things in this week and I'm finally celebrating the wins. Like it was like this great reflected moment of being like, wow, I'm already like doing so much and I'm not giving myself that credit. And really and seeping my spirit and gratitude was just really healing for me. And I felt like almost less less maybe upset about not being in my ideal scene now and just soaking up the now. And I think that's where a lot of the magic is like how to enjoy and soak up the now, because that's all we really have is right now. So if we can enjoy right now, like what a gift. And so yeah, I think those like little moments and things you would teach about, like just feeling like, how do you feel abundant right now? And how do you feel success right now? Or where do you feel love right now? Or like you were talking about that story of even taking your friends out to like go see like the movies or whatever. Like there's so many cool things that we can do to feel abundant and successful, even if it's starting where we're at right now, but that it really channels this really big, powerful energy. And so I just felt like that like mindset like really changed so much for me.
Yes, I love that. The gratitude being the bedrock of foundation, saying like, yes, more of this. Like whatever we're like focusing on, we're asking the universe for more of. So like letting that be gratitude. I love so much that that's like one of your biggest takeaways because I truly feel like you said it is the magic and it helps us be in the now and also like celebrating our wins. I feel like that's as well something that a lot of the other women share because I feel like as women we don't always give ourselves enough credit and let alone be in spaces where we like get to celebrate ourselves to other women.
Totally. Yeah. It's like kind of not part of our culture so much right now. Or it's still developing,
It's still
in a way.
developing. We're like, watch this space. The wave is forming, and it definitely is like forming in a lot of ways. But I think like it's so easy to slip into like competition or a comparison, and yeah, we're so much more powerful when we can all like hold the mirror for each other's highest growth. Okay, two more little upgrade questions. So with like with all the change that happened within those 12 weeks, like now being a few months out, like have your different, relationships like noticed a change in you? Like how has the way you interact like professionally shifted? Like what are some of those like tangible changes in the external world as a result that happened as a result of some of this internal work that you've done?
Yeah, totally. Well, we signed a really big client and we had actually been pitching potential clients for a few months, and we just signed someone who I'm so excited to work with and feels so aligned with us. And so that happened within the last couple weeks. So that was a big win.
Yay.
And then launching the cohort with 9 women, and that's selling out within 2 weeks. And really excited about that piece. And then, yeah, I feel like people are just like, oh my God, like you're unstoppable, you're on fire, like you're not holding back. Like, I feel like so much of like, it was almost like cleaning like the windshield. And my intuition was like always speaking and telling me like what to do next or how to navigate the day, how to balance all these projects. And like, I'm now just following every ping and in that flow in a way. And it feels like no matter how busy it is, it's like, oh, I just like have trust and I just show up and give it my all. And like things really do work out. So I just feel like people, I think, are seeing like that confidence shine through, or like little things of, yeah, like people are like, oh my God, I never thought I was like a fashion girl. Okay, this sounds like really lame, but I was like, I'm not a fashion girl. And then I started working in fashion, and I was like, I want to be a fashion girl. Like, I want to be into that, and I want that to be like part of me, and to have that be a creative expression. And for people now to like even do little compliments of like, I love your handbag, or like, what makeup are you wearing? Like, it was a belief that I never had about myself and a bit of an insecurity. And then I approached it with like excitement and exploration and curiosity, and like now it's a part of like something that I love and part of my identity. So to hear people be like, I love that jewelry, or I love what you're wearing, like it just feels like this new fun thing to share. And it was cool to not always feel that way and have people like reflect that too. But yeah, I think people notice like definitely the shift in confidence. And for people that have known me for a long time, I think that they've definitely have seen just like a alignment with like to be like just in my confidence and like deeply aligned with like myself. And I always felt like the person that kind of always wanted to be someone else, and I don't feel that way anymore. So I think people feel that, and I love also pumping other people up to like love to be who they are. And so I think people want to be around that, because it's like, people want to be around someone that encouraged like their deepest truth and sense of self to be honored. And so it feels good to embody that and then also beam it out and help people that are still working on it too. But yeah, I don't know, the clothes look different, the like a little more makeup, a little more fun things, but also being like, we ran into each other this morning and I had no makeup on and was just walking my dog Charlie. And it was like fun to also just be like that and be natural, and like that it's all kind of beautiful, even though it's different. So I think those are probably some of the things people are seeing or experiencing.
Yeah, the full spectrum, like letting yourself be seen, letting yourself be a fashion girl.
Why not? You know?
Yeah, launching your own group cohort of like now helping other people be seen. And I feel like, yeah, what we talked about before, like the balance stuff, like making time for yourself, like and making time to go to. I feel like I've seen you at so many of my events and other events since like the upgrade ended, and just like spreading your social butterfly wings.
Even hosting, I remember we were talking about when we first met, you were like, okay, you're gonna like go hike with your friends and like that'll be like a workout, but also a social thing. And then you could have something at your house and start having dinners. Like you had all these great recommendations because I know I was craving social time and you had all these smart ideas. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna just start hosting these dinners and gatherings. And then now it just feels so easy. But you sort of like planted the seed and then now it feels really easy to do it, which is interesting because it didn't feel like that before.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love that. Yeah. I've seen some photos of your beautiful hosting at your amazing space, and like I love that you just like makes my job easy because I'll just like have a suggestion and you just like take action.
Well, you have to come for dinner and experience the real magic because I've also fallen in love with cooking. And I think that's been my other like creative outlet that really balances out all the work too. It's like I love cooking and feeding people and trying new meals. And there's like deep meditation and like wisdom in cooking too. Because it's like you try new things and sometimes it doesn't work out and, you know, you can't be mad at it. It's just, you know, it's just the chicken you made that day. So
Totally. I love that. And just like slowly, like, yeah, all the nourishment and love and TLC and that we put into when we cook or make a meal. And then, you know, from the entrepreneur piece, because you were, you know, an entrepreneur before the upgrade and now after, and with like, you know, all of that, the hats, the moving balls that are in the air, like what is like the mindset now around kind of all of the uncertainty that we can face as entrepreneurs or owning our own business, and like where to go next and what to grow and how to like manage other people and expectations and stuff.
yeah, I think so much of it is about like seeing a healthy model that inspires you. I really got that at Ollipop because of the way my bosses and the founders were like treating me and respecting me and helping me grow. I just thought to myself, like, how cool would it be to like pass this on and like do that with like my assistants and mentor young people. It was just like this new way of doing business almost. It was like, whoa, this like is not common in corporate culture maybe all the time or in business culture. So I think seeing and living the model was really powerful, but I think we can also see it on a TV show or read it in a book. But I think sort of locking in mentally to like, okay, this is what I want it to feel like. This is what I want my business to feel like. This is how I want to work with people through adversity. And I remember one of the biggest takeaways at Ollipop was this idea of adopting a growth mindset, which really like stays true and is one of the biggest tenets of I think how I do everything, which is like, you know, you're never failing, you're either learning or succeeding. And because I started to really lock into that framework, I just felt like, why would I not go out and try something? Because I'm never going to fail if I'm learning. And so I think helping my team through adversity, or even something like right before walking into this, we had like a little issue and I felt myself being like, oh, I was feeling upset. And it was like, no, this is like a teachable moment. I can still be honest, but this is like a great teachable moment. To be direct, but kind as a boss. And that's really the relationship I want to have with people. Even when troubling things happen, it's all an opportunity and it's all how you respond. Or if it's an email coming from a client and they're confused or something's happening, just like getting like not worrying too much, getting on a call, being open to feedback, always being open to evolving and learning. And yeah, just never stopping that process, I think, and not taking it too personally. Like, I think you can't take your work too personally because it's always evolving. And especially if you're the face of your brand, it's also important to create that distinction in that space. But I think what's been so helpful is like just assessing like what's working and what's not. And then at the end of each month, just trying to like let go of what's really not working, adopt more things that are working. And even asking my like team sometimes, like, what do you guys think? Do you think there's a better way to run this? Having really smart, really passionate people around you, I think really allows you to build your dream team. And I think people need dream teams to build their dream. And so for me, it started with having these two assistants because I actually was not so great at working all by myself. And so I knew that I was going to invest a lot of money into having a team, but we were going to just produce the most amazing work and be like unstoppable because they were helping me in the execution. And so that's what I want to do now in the cohort is like a lot of these freelancers and individuals feel so alone. But in this cohort, they finally have the experience of like having a team, having an advisor, having an assistant. And so I'm excited to see if that sort of works and that thesis, tests out, because I think that sometimes when we just have the dream team, we're able to move so much more swiftly, the right people in the right place, and learning to delegate and like let go and be big picture, which I was always wanting to do, and step back and out. And that's also thrilling now too, to be like, oh, the thing I've been wanting to do, I can finally do. But sometimes I do have to dive back into the weeds sometimes and look through the details, and like that's okay too, and just navigating it and letting sort of like my intuition be my guide. But I would say all of that collectively and influence from my parents and like their enthusiasm and fire to create something out of nothing, like that kind of all informs the work.
Yeah, totally. And like you said, having the, those people around us who are inspiring, and also like having those moments of pause and like I usually react in this way, and like now I'm going to be curious, and like it can be a yes and of like allowing whatever emotion to come up and trusting that it will grow from it, and trusting that it's all as it's meant to be, and not letting it overthrow us, but rather just like processing and taking the lesson. Okay, last little upgrade question before we get to hear all that's on the horizon and some of your juicy takeaways for your own brand and cohort that you're launching. But what would you say to somebody who's like on the fence about joining the upgrade, or like not sure, like how would you describe it to them, and what would your advice be?
Just say yes. No. I think that for most people, like I'm sure some of it is like sometimes a financial constraint, which I was feeling that as well, and having my business and, knowing like I'm still in startup mode and, was sort of afraid to just spend the money. But I just had this unwavering belief of like, I know I'm going to figure it out, and there's always a flow of money, and I just have to tap into that. So while it was like a big of an extension to say yes to that, so much more came in and so many more ideas came in, and I became such a better leader and guide and business owner from it. So it was just so worth it to put the dollars into my self-development. So I would just say that I wouldn't overthink it too much. And I do feel like with the financial piece that, it's kind of like when there's a will, there's a way. Even if you have to get creative, which I feel like I ended up doing, like I kind of leaned into more of my one-on-one clients at the time. And even though they were smaller scopes, I was like, oh, this is going to help me, with the coaching. And I just made it work, and getting creative and stretching yourself for the things you really want. And there's never going to be like the perfect time, I think, to do anything, or, to spend on the things that you want to spend on. So I think you have to like trust your gut. But if your gut is really signaling, or, you go into Meredith's calls like in tears and like you probably need help. So I would say just, to lean in. But I think talking to people that had gone through the upgrade would be really cool for people to hear that experience too.
Yeah, to have like more of that insight. Because I know, that was what you and Elena got to experience. Like I love doing monthly meetups for women. At this point, there's like 25, 30 women who live in LA who have been through the upgrade.
So amazing.
and just having monthly meetups from women from different cohorts who have gone through it at different years, getting to link up. And I know like that day, both of you were like, okay, I'm doing it, which was really cool. And then in like 2 sentences on your own, like how would you just describe it to like somebody? So like, what is the upgrade?
The upgrade is a portal into your potential and the safe space you've been craving to be seen in your highest self and to let go of any old layer that is ready to go and to create space for the new you to emerge and express yourself in the world.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Maybe something like that. I could riff a little more, but that's the start.
I'm definitely going to use a portal into your potential. A potential portal. I love that. That's so good. And I'm so honored. And yeah, thank you for like sharing in depth your experience in it, because like you said, it's like, it's such a unique thing that like happens, and it happens when everyone is like fully bought in and like committed to their growth and committed to showing up for the other women. And that's like where the magic has happened. And it's been so inspiring to see like you amongst the other women in the program. And like, yeah, one of, like you were saying, like some of our first talks were about being seen, and it's like, here you are like fully like out in the open, helping other people be seen like now, which I'm so excited for us to talk a little bit more about. So yeah, like now that we've really covered the upgrade and some of the inner work that you've done, what are the things that you're most excited about with your own cohort, your own group coaching program, and what are like a few of the Alexa secret sauce elements there that really help unlock people to allow themselves to be seen on social media?
Such a good question. Well, I'm really excited because the cohort group has such a wide variety of members, from someone who's a graphic designer and has her own agency, to someone who owned a food company and sold her business and is now rediscovering herself, to a friend who is a model and an entrepreneur, to a photographer, to my friend who owns a hair salon. So just like, I love the multifaceted and dynamic people that are in it. And I love when I'm in a room with people with all different vantage points. Like, I think you get such a well-rounded perspective. And I think what I'm excited about is for people to bring their work, whether it's their social posts, photos of themselves, their newsletters, their websites, their taglines, and bring it to the group and get real live feedback from people before it goes live. So you really get like, you know, sort of consumer insights or group insights, and get like a survey in ways where maybe you wouldn't have had access to that before. And so I'm really excited because a lot of brands just want to get those insights as well. So I love the idea of like testing that in a group forum, and that everyone gets really clear on like what is their goal, on what they want to accomplish in their career over the next few months, whether it's posting consistently, revitalizing their website, finally allowing themselves to be seen, and so that I can help hold them accountable and teach them like all the tips and tricks to really get them there, but that it starts with the safety within the group. And I was very inspired by the way you also created that safety. And I just, as I was looking around, I was like, I don't feel like this really exists in social media in this way, where there's also like a consciousness around social media of like, you know, doing the inner work, being true to yourself, having technology serve you and your highest needs instead of the other way around. And sometimes like growing on social media can feel kind of like clickbaity and intense. And so I was like, how do I create something that feels more like me and feels more like true and authentic? And so that's like what I'm excited about, is to like reframe the relationship with socials so that it can really serve all these amazing people that are meant to take up more space online. And that's what I'm like hoping to see. And then in terms of like the secret sauce, I think that my background in photography and design definitely plays an element and a role into it. So like, I think I'm really good at helping people, you know, brand themselves or find a great graphic designer to work with, and like helping people sort of like package them up in a way that feels exciting. It feels like relatable, but it doesn't feel like too daunting and intimidating. But I think in how like focusing on like how things appear was sort of like, it would sort of hinder me at time in my journey. It's like, I see the power of that and the power of packaging, the power of like first impressions. And so I'm like, oh, how can I like help people work on that and work on the inner piece at the same time so that it feels aligned, but it feels like it's really coming from like this deep and heart-centered place. And so, my love for design and photography plays the role, and my love for technology and learning all these tools, but then also helping people channel their deepest desires and having their messages really refined. So like that's what's being communicated through all the digital work. But I think my secret sauce probably just like, I don't know. I think
or
just
like your hottest tip.
Consistency. I feel like,
yeah, really.
I think consistency and like, you do such a great job of this too. It's like the consistency of your podcast or doing events and posting. And it's like what you're doing now might not necessarily look like what it looks like in a few years, but the fact that you're showing up consistently and you're literally laying down the foundational brick one at a time, like that grows into something huge and it will get there. It does require like laying down those foundational pieces, and walking through like the portals of growth when those opportunities arise too. But I think, yeah, like the consistency is everything, and that it doesn't have to be perfect, and that the sweet sauce or the hot tip is to let go of perfectionism and do it anyways, and just like turn off the comments and hide the likes if it's too much, and just do it anyways.
Yeah, that's such a good point of just like removing the metrics to just like throw it against the wall and see what sticks. And for the consistency with people who like feel intimidated or struggle with that, like do you help them kind of think of like a schedule, or what are those like initial baby steps for people who really want to like, start growing their social in that authentic way, but feel like overwhelmed by the idea of the consistency? What is a suggestion to help make it easier, more digestible for people?
Yeah, I think there's a few steps. And so typically what we do is we start with our strategy deck, which it's something we sell online. It's a blank template, but basically it has all of these pieces in it, from developing an idea of where you're headed as a business, to what your content buckets are or the conversations you want to own, to your dream brand partnerships or what you want your social to look like and feel like, all those kind of like foundational pieces. So I help guide people through that. But I think thinking through like, what do you want this to look like and feel like, and what are the messages you want to be sending out on social, or kind of like, what do you want to be known for? And then getting clear on grouping some of the content into those themes and those thematic buckets, I think is really helpful. And then setting a very attainable goal of like one post a week or one story a week, and trying that for a month, and then building upon that and again and again. But in the template, what's nice is like you can drag and drop, your creative work in there and move things around. And it's like a shareable Canva deck. So say you're not even a social media expert, you can start to drop in ideas and fill this out, and even like send it to friends and being like, here's what I'm posting for the next grid of 9. Like, what do you think about this? Or does this make sense? And, like, what do you think of this caption? So it's like a cool way to have everything organized from a brand building perspective to a social calendar and organizational perspective, and even like share that with friends and family. And, you're at dinner with your family one night being like, hey, I just want to like pull this up. I'm working on my social. Will you guys share feedback? And I bet there'd be so many insights to glean from that too. And that you don't always need, you don't always need so much. Sometimes it's the people around you that will have the best advice for you. But I think having a tool to get organized and knowing how you want to present yourself and what you want to keep sharing, and then just being consistent and like being open to learning along the way. Because we've had videos go live that have, that are fuzzy and don't have really weird sound, and you refine it to be something beautiful that feels really close to perfection, and that like, but it didn't stop us from just starting also.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And just like letting it be okay to evolve and to grow. And you said a few times like having technology work for us versus the other way around. So like, what would your suggestion be there for people to develop a healthy relationship with social media, and to have it work, for them? Because I think for so many people, it can be like a love-hate relationship or, you know, speaking from my own past personal experience, like there's so much that I want to share as a coach, but then sometimes it's like overwhelming, or I'll spend like 2 hours like putting something out there and it gets like 10 likes or something. And you're like, well, each like matters. And I did it for myself. And of course, I've gotten a lot of like, you know, community and clients and other wonderful things from social. But how do you help people like heal and own that relationship